was appointed nominated rather by the president and approved by parliament after vetting, and we have now a letter that he has addressed to the president announcing his resignation, and I'm just going to quickly read this for you. It's a rather lengthy one, and so we'll share it. It says, resignation of appointment as special prosecutor. Kindly refer, Your Excellency, to your letter which reference number has been quoted here, dated 30th January 2020, and hand-delivered to me in person on 5th February 2020, formally offering me appointment as a special prosecutor. I also refer to my letter dated 17th February 2020, accepting Your Excellency's offer of appointment as a special prosecutor made in your said letter. The purpose of this letter is to convey to Your Excellency, Mr. President of the Republic, that pursuant to Section 13, 8, and 10 of the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017, Act 959, and Article 1453 of the 1992 Constitution, I am resigning my position as a special prosecutor with immediate effect to enable Your Excellency to take steps to appoint a replacement to the position as required by law. The statement continues, or the letter rather continues to say, the one condition upon which I accepted to be nominated as a special prosecutor when you invited me to your office on 10th January 2018 was your firm promise to me that you will respect and ensure same by your government for my independence and freedom of action as a special prosecutor. Several things have happened since then, but your reaction to my letter with reference number quoted here, dated 16th October 2020, which was delivered to you on 19th October 2020, conveying to you the conclusions and observations of the analysis of the risk of corruption and anti-corruption assessment of the Ejapa Royalties Limited transaction, convinces me beyond every reasonable doubt that you had labored under the mistaken belief that I could hold the office of the special prosecutor as your poodle.
Wow.
After receiving my letter under reference on 19th October 2020, you ordered your chief of staff on 20th October 2020 to deliver an urgent message personally to me on the same day. When she could not reach me on telephone, she decided to invite me in writing in her letter with reference number quoted here and dated 20th October 2020, stating that, quote, I have been directed by His Excellency the President of the Republic to deliver an urgent message personally to you today, 20th October 2020. I'm looking forward to seeing you as requested, unquote. I received the Chief of Staff's letter the next morning, 21st October 2020, and reported to her office as requested. The message she delivered to me was that you had instructed that I was not to do anything about my report on the Ejapa Royalties transaction until I had met you on Friday, 23rd October 2020. You were away in the Volta region when I met the Chief of Staff. So, Vivian, that's the first page of the 3-letter resignation to the President.
Okay, I'll take the other one page quickly. I met Your Excellency in your office in the afternoon of 23rd October 2020, and I underscore the fact that my letter dated 16th October 2020 to you was sent out of the necessary courtesy of prior information to your office as President of the Republic and the Commander-in-Chief responsible for national security. I also underscore the fact that the analysis of risk of corruption and anti-corruption assessment was conducted professionally. It could not be reviewed by the Minister of Finance or yourself, and my letter was particularly not intended for you to direct me as to how to conduct the duties of my office. Your Excellency insisted that I should withhold any further action on the report for 1 week. I reluctantly agreed to your terms, but gave you notice immediately that I did not intend to continue as special prosecutor because of your interference in the performance of my functions under the law. You eventually invited me to your office in the evening of Sunday, 1st November 2020, where I again asserted that I was not going to bargain over the independence of my functions as special prosecutor. Now, I refuse to take the copy of the alleged comments from the Minister of Finance you offered me, as that would have compromised my independence as special prosecutor. I also refuse to shelve my report to enable you handle the matter, which explains my press release to the public on the morning of 2nd November 2020 and follow up with the distribution of the full 64-page Ejapa Royalties Transaction Anti-Corruption Assessment report to the public. Now, unbeknown to you that I had published the full 64-page report to the public, you caused a press statement to be made based on my letter dated 16 October 2020 to you, and a reference which sought to politicize and downplay the seriousness of the professional analysis of the risks of corruption and anti-corruption assessment report by my office. It thus became abundantly clear to me that I cannot continue under your government as a special prosecutor because we disagree on the non-partisan independence of the special prosecutor in the performance of the functions of my office in preventing and fighting corruption and corruption-related offences. Now, the 64-page analysis of corruption-related offences in respect of which I intend to open full investigations as special prosecutor. I cannot do that now after your political interference in the performance of functions of the office for 2 weeks from 20th October 2020 to 1st November 2020, culminating your directives on how the anti-corruption assessment report of the Ejapa Royalties Limited transaction by this office should be handled by the principal suspects disclosed by the anti-corruption assessment report. Now, more importantly, he says in that letter, Your Excellency was acting as a judge in your own course in usurping my functions to take any independent follow-up actions on the anti-corruption assessment report when you knew from my 13-page letter of 16th October 2020 conveying the conclusions and observations of the anti-corruption assessment report to you that negative anti-corruption assessment had been made against the conduct of your office and the procedure adopted in granting the executive approval dated 24th March 2020 and your assent of the Minerals Income Investment Amendment Act 2020 Act 1024 on the 27th of August 2020 intended to retroactively impact the parliamentary approval of the transactions documents granted on 14th August this year. Now, pages 31 to 33 and 52 to 53 of the full 64-page report submitted to you on 2nd November 2020 contains a detailed anti-corruption assessment on these matters. The totality of the foregoing interventions by you in my functions make my position as a special prosecutor untenable.
So, Vivian, that's the second page. And I'm going to bring you, and let me just quickly say that this is a letter that the special prosecutor has sent to the office of the president announcing his resignation. The office of special prosecutor, or the special prosecutor himself, has issued a press release announcing his resignation. But we have got this letter which has been delivered to the presidency or sent to the presidency. So the press release will be sharing shortly, which is what is intended for the public based on the information that Mr. Amidu wants the world to know. But this is an internal letter that we have picked up, a letter which he wrote to the president, which we are reading for you. So let me just bring you the final page. And then before you give us a press release. And it says, I had also stated at my vetting for approval by Parliament on 13 February 2018, which was broadcast to the whole world, that the Office of the Special Prosecutor will be innovatively operationalized and run effectively and efficiently in accordance with international best practice to be able to achieve its objectives of preventing, investigating, prosecuting corruption and corruption-related offenses and recovering assets of corruption. Unfortunately, by July 2020, I had not been able to have an office staffed by independently recruited and impartial staff operating with a credible institution culture of anti-corruption to achieve the mandate of the office. This was undertaken I made to Parliament and the people of Ghana on oath during my vetting for approval for appointment. The whole proceedings of my vetting for approval for appointment is still available online, and I am most disappointed to listen to it years down the line. The compulsion to use a limited number of seconded staff in a 3-bedroom boys' quarters accommodation undermined the achievement of the objectives of this office and my undertaking on oath before Parliament. One cannot seriously continue to prevent and fight corruption by depending on seconded staff of a 2-year duration renewable for another year who are looking forward to and or over their shoulders to returning to their main employers, who consequently may have more influence over them than the special prosecutor under whom they are supposed to work. I am most grateful for every assistance and support Your Excellency, Mr. President, offered me since my appointment on 23rd February 2018. Regrettably, our wishes have not materialized during Your Excellency's first term in office for obvious operational and political reasons, and we now fundamentally disagree on a non-partisan professional approach to the prevention of corruption and fighting corruption to make it a high-risk enterprise for public officers. I also do not see any serious non-partisan prospect of any improvement in preventing and fighting corruption in Your Excellency's next term of office in 2021. My view has always been that if I cannot assist Your Excellency, Mr. President, in a non-partisan professional way to prevent corruption and to fight corruption, I should not hurt Your Excellency by continuing to occupy the position of the Special Prosecutor. It is essential for me to state for the purpose of the records and contrary to public perceptions that my appointment letter was received on 5th February 2020, almost 2 years after my appointment. The copy addressees made no effort to honor any of the conditions of appointment in terms of emoluments and benefits of appointment ever since my warrant appointment was issued on 23rd February 2018 to the date of this letter of resignation. I accepted your offer on 10th January 2018 to be nominated the first Special Prosecutor because Your Excellency, Mr. President, and Ghanaians knew I have been a non-partisan anti-corruption crusader all my life and not an anti-corruption entrepreneur. This explains why I have never put the emoluments and benefits of the office as central to my commitment and my passion for the establishment of a non-partisan and independent, effective, efficient, and impartial anti-corruption office of the Special Prosecutor before the end of the first term of Your Excellency, Mr. President. This has not been possible for several reasons, including those expressly stated herein before. I have delayed since I have delayed here.
Okay, Sandra, I will have to let you go. You have to go on Eyewitness to continue this conversation. I'll just take 30 minutes of your time. You have been following this story. You know this man very well. Was this expected, this thing that is coming? 30 seconds.
Yes, Vivian, it's not everything I know that I should divulge, but this is a Special Prosecutor who has struggled to do his work. Since he was appointed, I was the first journalist to go to his office, and when I did a tour of his office, I wrote an article which is on citynewsroom.com, which article talked about how ineffective he was going to be because of the office he has been given. And you've just heard him there, a 3-bedroom boys' quarters to run an office of Special Prosecutor was a no-no for him. He has identified a building near Parliament House, which is a 10-story Gates Fund building. He has asked for it to be handed over to him formally. The work on it has not completed. And continuously, he makes a statement that the office he wants to run is really difficult because he's not been given the resources. How many policemen does he have? Less than 3. How many investigators does he have? Less than 2. How many prosecutors does he have? Around 3. He cannot run the office of Special Prosecutor with this understaffed, under-resourced office. And that really, for me as a journalist who have been following his office closely, is something I have seen coming all this while, except that I wasn't sure when it was going to come. Okay,
the conversation continues. The Eyewitness team will be waiting for you. I'm going to bring in another person who has been following this story as well, Bernard Avle, who will join me in a bit. But the news coming in is Special Prosecutor Martin Amidu has resigned. He's tendered his resignation letter to the President. We've got copies of that letter, as well as a statement released by him also announcing his resignation. If you go to our website now, citynewsroom.com, the full details of that is on that website. But there's a 3-page letter sent to the President tabling why he's resigning and why he cannot do the job anymore. In a bit, I'll also give you a statement from the Special Prosecutor, Exeter now, telling the public why he resigned. But let me bring in Bernard Avle. In the mornings, he's on the breakfast show, and at night, he's on Point of View. Wow. Bernard, you broke this on radio. I mean, were you expecting this news today?
Well, you know, in the media we are in, nothing shocks me anymore. You know, nothing shocks me anymore. I would say I'm surprised Mr. Amidu has resigned, because we've been listening to some of his moans, and I think that if you listen to all he said and read through all that has happened, I think he decided to at least finish the Japa work for the record, despite all the problems Sandra has articulated, the fact that for 2 years they've not received any particular pay, and the fact that there's been little support for his work. I think he chose this moment for a number of reasons, and I don't want to speculate, but he mentions this very clearly in his letter, that the kind of reaction he got after the Japa work, as if people were sort of asking him how dare he do such a thorough job on the Japa deal. And if you look at some of the things he said to the President as well, he must have been disappointed in the President, because he says when he looked at the President's response to his work on the Japa deal, he believes the president is of the opinion that he, Martin Amidu, can be his poodle.
Yes, and that's in the 3rd paragraph of that letter.
And you know, Martin Amidu he cannot be reined in. His commitment to the public cause is very clear. We know his history as Attorney General. We know the explosive letter he wrote in the case of judgment debts. We know the repercussions of that. We know how the NDC party responded to that letter.
Okay.
So, in fact, I'm sure there are people in the MPP who would be saying to the president, we told you so. Okay, because Mr. Amidu cannot be controlled. He can only be unleashed against corruption. And if he perceives that he's being hampered or he's being unfairly treated, he would not take that. So it's very clear that this is, and in fact, if you listen to, in fact, in 2018, City News interviewed John Ndebogre. John Ndebogre used to work with Martin Amidu. In fact, they worked together as PNDC secretaries. And in that interview, Mr. Ndebogre told us that if Martin Amidu is not given the space to work, he would resign. This is what John Ndebogre told us, one of the few people who really know him. And he said this to us in 2018.
But it didn't take a long time for him to take that decision, because immediately after he came into that office, after a couple of months, people were expecting so much, because when he was citizen vigilante, he did quite a lot. And people were expecting so much. At a point, even CSOs were fighting for his, cause, others. And people were saying, if you can't do the work, just resign. Did it take him too long to
administrative work is different from what you do on your own. So once you enter an office, that's why he copiously quotes the law. He must act within the law. So it's more difficult to take action once you are in the position. Now, he states that even though he was publicly announced in 2018, his letter actually came this year, February 2020. So over a year and a half since the announcement was made, before his letter came. So if you look at the length of time he stayed in office properly, it's been less than a year, because the letter came in February and we're in December 2020. So and he says that for the years they've been working, they've not received any emolument, and he's not resigning because of that. I think the key reason is the lack of presidential support and
independence
and action on this seminal Ejapa work, because the Ejapa deal has been very controversial. And if you look at the level of detail he put in calling out the proponents of the deal and even suggesting criminal collusion of some kind in terms of how the relationships were formed and the backlash is received from particularly elements within the ruling government. I think if you read his letter very carefully, he feels the president did not do what he ought to have done with the gravity of the letter he wrote and the president's letter addressing parliament to take a second look at the deal. I think he just felt that this was the last straw that broke the camel's back.
Okay, I'm going to go on the phone lines. We'll go into detail the letter, some of the things he said and all that. But let me go to the phone lines and speak to the executive director of Imani, Franklin Kujo, to pick his thoughts about this news we're giving to you. Franklin, if you can hear me, welcome.
Well, good evening to your good self and Bernard. Look, these are rather interesting times. I'm not entirely surprised. There's an put up a post suggesting that Amidu should have been allowed to appoint or hire his own investigators. Because that is what most successful prosecutors in some parts of the world have done. Because it is almost expected that the corruption, as the Vice President said, is a monster, and it will fight you back. And if you are the Special Prosecutor then you don't have the backing to appoint or elect your own investigators. You are halfway out of the door. And if it turns out that as the letter that the Special Prosecutor has written now suggests that it's never had presidential backing, it's rather dire and rather direction on the office of the president. I'm not entirely surprised, because Martin, even though it cannot be predicted, it's quite predictable when it comes to the things he says and doesn't like, or he says he doesn't like. So just that it's coming at a time when we are going for elections. And some people will say that's a middle finger to the whole fight against corruption, as starting as it has been.
Okay. Right. So this latest development, what impact will they have on the president's fight against corruption? Knowing very well that the special prosecutor stating that if you look at the letter to the president, for example, the third paragraph saying that, if I can quote, from the analysis of the risks of corruption and anti-corruption assessment of the Japa Royalties Limited transactions convinces me beyond every reasonable doubt that you had labored under the mistaken belief that I could hold the office of the special prosecutor as your poodle.
Wow.
Well, but these are things we didn't hear. Should I say the bill is being lifted, and if that's what it's saying, it depends on the number of the privilege that he might have received. That part of the letter tells me that there's a lot more to his letter than his paper on the Japan than meets the eye. Those are strong words. Poodle and all of those stuff. Like a Lachi and a Lachimon. I don't think Martin Amidu is a pushover. He's not. But you see, this is not entirely a good story for the presidency because you see, this again somehow offends the belief many people have that even though some of these entities have been resolved quite creatively, they've also been thwarted in the airport. I can imagine what the Auditor General is saying right now, because this is another of those stories that the Auditor General will say, well, it looks as if I'm not the only one. So, look, I think the president needs to put his house in order. These are not good times at all. And even though corruption is taking some sort of a back burner in this election, these things must be dealt with immediately, because to have a special prosecutor resigning in the manner Amidu has, it's quite unfortunate, really.
Now, must he put Justice House in order, or he himself? Because if you look into the letter to him himself, I think the third page, he also says that I cannot do that now in terms of investigating the matter because of your political interference in the performance of the functions of the office for 2 weeks from October 20th to 1st November, culminating your directives on how the anti-corruption assessment report of the Japa Royalties Limited transaction by this office should be handled by the principal suspects disclosed by the anti-corruption assessment report. He himself, the special prosecutor, is accusing the president himself of interfering.
Again, this was long in coming. Don't forget, the special prosecutor, a while back, in the case of Charles Bishi and a number of actors in government, he did state that his efforts were being thwarted by unseen hands, and his appeal to the president. If it is the case that the prosecutor has finally reached that inflection point and is suggesting now that all this while apparently it was you that were behind the decisions, that again is another solid aspect of our fight against corruption that I don't think any president seeking an re-election would want to be hearing. And don't forget the matter on which the special prosecutor seems to have fallen on the Japan, by the way, his interest has been heightened by the media.
Okay.
Look to the international media will be salivating listening to the story. Now, certainly, we wouldn't be part of that narrative, but I think that it's unfortunate it has happened this way. And like they say, Shakespeare says, well, the world is a stage, and we are mere actors. I suspect the special prosecutor has done his due, and he thinks the curtain should be raised. The curtain should rather come down.
All right.
It's rather a sobering evening.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Franklin Kujo is the president of Imani. Bernard, it appears to have seen this coming in. I mean, we all expected this to come at a point, but it kept not really coming.
Well, I think, sometimes you need to bow out when the applaud is loudest. And I think if you look, if all fair-minded people who read the Japa report that he did, and the thoroughness of the work and the scathing nature of the report against the deal. Some will say he did a proper job. So I think he feels the fact that he didn't get the support after that, at least now he's done something substantive, albeit with very little resources. This is the best time to go. So yes, you can say, based on all the things that were stumbling blocks put in his way, you would have expected this earlier.
Yeah.
But you can't occupy an office for a year and not produce anything. And he's done some investigations. But I think the most high profile is the Ejapa one. And if you look at the level of civil society support for that work he did, and the thoroughness of the work he did, obviously this is the best time to bow out if you are not happy with and the fact that, look, we have an election in 3 weeks. You don't know who's going to win the election.
Yeah.
So if you haven't received emoluments for over a year, and you haven't received the help you need, there's no telling what's going to happen after election. So I guess having done the Ejapa report and sent copies to the public, so the public, don't forget, he sent this to the presidency and waited for some response, which he did not get, before this managed to get leaked to the public. So, look, it's a huge story, but not too surprising for watchers of the situation. If you really look at all the things that have happened within the anti-corruption space and the reputation of Mr. Amidu for somebody who doesn't take nonsense. In fact, some people will say they're even surprised he didn't resign earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm not, because I felt he probably wanted to put some solid work in place. And the Ejapa report, he would say, posterity will judge him kindly. In fact, the end of his letter, he says that he believes that irrespective of criticisms he's received for his work, at the end of history, or when posterity comes to judge, history will be kind to him. Because that work is there for all to see. And don't forget, that work gave Ghana at least 2 weeks of solid discussion. The Ejapa issue was going under the radar until he brought his work out, for which reason the president sent it back to Parliament. So if for nothing at all, the Ejapa deal becomes his major issue. A lot of people wonder why he mentioned President Mahama's Airbus issue in that report, which led to a lot of NDC people saying that he was trying to do an equalization job. I'm not sure he took kindly to that. But I think the Ejapa report speaks for itself. Okay, if you take out the comments about the Airbus deal, the Ejapa report on its own was probably his best job within that period.
But if you look at the contents of that letter to the president, very strong statements made in there. Let's start with the poodle part, and then we can look at him accusing the president of interference and all that, and a judge.
Which is why I'm saying that the Ejapa deal is the main issue here, because the paragraph says, the one condition under which I accepted to be nominated as Special Prosecutor when you invited me to your office on 10 January 2018 was your firm promise to me that you will respect and ensure same by your government for my independence and freedom of action as Special Prosecutor. Emphasis mine. Independence, that means not subject to control by anybody, and freedom of action as Special Prosecutor. Now, he says several things have happened since then. So he's basically saying, I have overlooked a lot of things, but your reaction to my letter with reference OSP SCR 2012-20 dated 16 October, exactly a month ago today, exactly a month ago today, which was delivered to you on 19 October 2020, conveying to you the conclusions and observations of the analysis of the risk of corruption and anti-corruption assessment of the Ejapa Royalties Limited transaction. So it says the president's reaction to his letter detailing his findings in the Ejapa deal convinces him beyond every reasonable doubt that the president was working under the mistaken impression that Mr. Amidu could be pushed around. The use of the word poodle is very interesting. Okay, so he's basically saying, you promise me you'll give me an independent space to work, and I'll have freedom of action. Your reaction to my work on the Ejapa deal suggests to me you think I am somebody you can push around, meaning you don't really know who I am. I will not stand for that. That's essentially what he's saying.
Okay. Then you move to the third page, if you have that, and the last two paragraphs. If you come to the last statements of the very serious statements as well.
But you need to note that before that paragraph, he states that he's grateful for every assistance and support offered him since appointment on 23rd February. Regrettably, our wishes have not materialized during your first term in office for obvious operational and political reasons. And we now fundamentally disagree on a non-partisan professional approach to the prevention of corruption and fighting corruption to make it a high-risk enterprise for public officers. This is very serious. Because in appointing Mr. Amidu, the president faced backlash from his own party, who felt that he was somebody who could not be controlled. And I think initially, Mr. Amidu was under the impression that the president appointed him to allow him to do an independent job to check people. Now he's saying that based on all that has happened, it's very clear we don't agree on this this non-partisan professional approach. He also says, I do not see any serious non-partisan prospect of any improvement in preventing and fighting corruption in your next term of office. This is
a serious statement.
I do not see any serious non-partisan prospect of any improvement in preventing and fighting corruption in your next term of office, 2021. I don't know if he's assuming the man is winning. My view has always been that if I cannot assist Your Excellency, Mr. President, in non-partisan professional way to prevent corruption and to fight corruption, I shall not hurt you by continuing to occupy the position of Special Prosecutor. It means we can't deliver on what you wanted me to deliver.
Yeah.
Now, he also then goes on to state what you said I should talk about, the whole idea of that he received his letter February 5, almost 2 years after his appointment publicly. The copy addresses made no effort to honor any of the conditions of appointment in terms of emoluments and benefits of appointment ever since my warrant of. So from 23rd February 2018, he's not received, based on his claim, any of the promises in terms of conditions of appointment, in terms of emoluments. So we don't know that salary, other entitlements, whether it's transportation, we don't know. He says, I accepted your offer to be nominated as Special Prosecutor, and Ghanaians knew I had been a non-partisan anti-corruption crusader all my life, and not an anti-corruption entrepreneur. It's basically saying that I'm not doing this work for pay. So I'm not resigning because you've not paid me. But I'm stating for the record that for the 2 years that I've been in this thing, I haven't received any payment. This explains why I have never put the emolument and benefits of the office as central to my commitment and passion for the establishment of a non-partisan independent office. Then he goes on to say that his building of an effective, efficient, and non-partisan office has not been possible for several reasons, including those he has stated herein before. All the things that happened after his Japa work.
But in looking at this story and this matter of the Special Prosecutor and issues of emoluments, even payment to run the office and all that, why was it difficult for government to help run that office from day one?
Corruption is a very big issue in Ghana, and it's very difficult to deal with it. Now, the president promised to use law to fight corruption. In the previous election, he talked about the ANAS principle, and then he also spoke about a special prosecutor, because the main issue has been that prosecution of any form of crime under a government and our constitution has to happen under the Attorney General. The Attorney General is a direct appointee of the president and also sees a lot of the politician ministers as his peers. Now, if the Attorney General doesn't support, it's going to be difficult to prosecute your own side. So what they said was that because corruption was a high-risk activity, and because of politically exposed persons' penchant for high-level corruption, you are going to put up a Special Prosecutor's office to take some burden of the Attorney General, to support him to investigate on his own people who could include government officials. Now, that's great on paper, but if you appoint a man like Martin Amidu, who cannot be pushed around, some MP people will say you are basically digging a hole for yourself. If you look at the conditions under which he resigned as Attorney General to President Mills, where he said people were committing gargantuan crimes that they wanted to hide. So he's basically a man who would not see evil and keep quiet. Now, you know the way our politics works. Funding of political parties and campaign activity is not very transparent. So if Mr. Amidu would not be controlled by anybody, and he can pick and choose who to prosecute, now some of your appointees who are engaged in corruption will be in trouble. Now, the effect of that is your government will get unpopular. So we do know that there was a lot of resistance to his appointment. So for many people in civil society, the president appointing Mr. Amidu was a masterstroke, essentially showing the man's commitment to fighting corruption. But the skeptics said he would not be allowed to do his work. He was just being appointed to be tamed, because prior to his appointment, he was doing citizen vigilante work. On his own, he went to pursue judgment debt for the state at his own cost. So some people cynically said, you are appointing the man because you want to take him away from his independent work. Give him some work that you want him to do, but prevent him from doing the work. Some of those people can say they are right, because Mr. Amidu says, since you appointed me, you haven't supported me. So the naysayers who said, oh, Mr. Amidu was appointed by the president based on the fact that he wanted to keep him quiet as a citizen vigilante, they've been proved right. Because they are saying that if you left the man without appointing him, he would have continued his anti-corruption work at his own cost. I mean, this man went to the Supreme Court to collect monies owed us.
Yes.
Which were wrongfully paid as judgment debt on principle. Since he became special prosecutor, he has not been able to do that.
Anything.
Okay, so the cynics and the two effects of this. So if corruption were a major issue for this election, and if that was going to determine some votes, it would negatively affect the president, because clearly Mr. Amidu, among the neutrals in civil society, is one who fights against corruption. So this is not good for the president.
Yeah.
Don't forget, last week we were also talking about his Auditor General himself going through all kinds of challenges with an investigative report of some audit about X amount of money spent on travels, which some people see as some pushback from the executive government against a good man doing his job. This has not been a good week for the president on anti-corruption.
But what does this say about our fight against corruption? If what we're expecting with the special prosecutor was to deal with a large chunk of that, and with this, what does it say about our fight?
It says two things. Corruption is much deeper and stronger than we think. It also proves the saying that even though strong individuals are important in any enterprise, strong institutions are more permanent. So as somebody said, nothing is possible without people, but nothing is permanent without institutions. So strong individuals, Domelevo, Amidu, can only take us far. Which is why President Obama's point is very seminal. He says, build strong institutions, because strong men cannot outlast systemic problems. Okay, so what this proves is that corruption is much deeper than we think. The institutional and vested interest in corruption are very strong, and our hope that a strong, honest person alone can help us win the fight against corruption will not work if the institutional arrangement around the person are not built and made to be strong. This is the conclusion.
Okay, let me go to the phone lines again and speak to Mary Ada. She's the programs manager for the Ghana Integrity Initiative. If you can hear me, Madam, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Vivian, and good evening to your service.
Okay. Well, what are your initial remarks on this story?
Seriously, this is confusing. This is not expected, even though for some time now we have heard the lamentations from Amidu to do his work, which have all bordered on logistical issues. So this is not what we expected, but it's not too surprising based on the chronicles of the issues he presented today. But we didn't expect that this would happen. We expected that as vigilante who spearheaded the fight against corruption, even from the outside, now that he's been given power to pretend over an office and ensure that things have seen better results. Unfortunately, we have had cause in the recent past to mention some of the issues we thought should have happened with the office. And so we expected that he would have been allowed to do his work, especially now that he's saying that from the corruption resistance, he received some backlash, which have made his current position to resign untenable.
Are you surprised by the contents of the letter that he sent to the president, actually accusing him of interfering in some of the work he was doing, and then worried about the fight proper against corruption, and in some cases feeling that the interference was too much?
All right, so for him, we cannot say he is lying, because he was in the office and he is a person who was working, and for him to say that there were interference, and we have had cause in the past to also indicate that the fight against corruption can only be effective if systems are allowed to function fluidly. If people who have been appointed to places of power are allowed to work without any interference, we say this is an indicator And so we have no business in doing in any process. And for him to say today that people have interfered and people came at him for taking his views in approaching risk assessment, that means we cannot say he's lying. Seriously, we cannot say. And in the past, we have had calls to mention saying that people who are given power are not allowed to operationalize, are not allowed to defend of their mandates, are not allowed by restricting them of the needed funding or resources, and also interference in the process. And this is a clear indication that our commitment to the fight against corruption leaves much to be desired. We need to let people work. We need to allow them to do what we ask them to do. And we are saying this is disappointing because the president in his appointment indicated he's giving him a free hand to operate. So it is surprising that today Amidu is turning around to say that he has been impeded from operating as an independent person who is assigned the fight against corruption.
So what does this say about our fight against corruption, and is there any hope at all in that fight for us as a country?
There is. It says a lot that the powers that be, if they are not committed to this fight, we are going to be paying lip service. We will continue to do that until we commit to do effective work, until we commit to allow institutions of state, which the president committed to and continues to espouse. And so we are seen to be doing that and not just paying lip service. We would continue to talk about corruption. We would continue to thrive. We have signed on to several conventions to demand or require this nation to do differently. We have seen other African countries begin to do some good work, and we mention them as examples. These are not better than Ghana in any way. And so we expect that some of the things that we do, which are hampering our fight against corruption, we stop them. And perhaps we begin to look back into the way we finance our political parties. Because much of the burden of this fight comes back, or if you say, goes back to that. People invest hugely. People expect certain things to happen. And the perception out there is that until we tackle that elephant in the room, we would continue to have issues with the fight against corruption.
All right. Thank you very much, Mary Ada. She's the programs manager of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. We're giving us some interesting comments on this matter. Bernard, you have the statement, the public statement as well. You feel as
I think what's interesting, Mr. Amidu, is he not only writes a public statement, he also, we have the copy of his letter to the president. And I think that's where the serious issue is.
Yeah.
He gives a chronicle of his letter dated October 20 to the October 19 to the president. The president's response, meeting with the chief of staff, met the presidency on 23rd October. President essentially was trying to ask him not to take any action on his report and to take into consideration the views of the finance minister. Mr. Amidu thinks the president is trying to tell him how to do his work, and that he only sent a letter to the president with a report as a matter of courtesy. So it's basically saying that I am not working as, I'm not reporting to you my work. I'm showing you a copy of my work. I'm reporting to the public. This is where the problem is. And he says, you told me that I should withhold my any action on the report for 1 week. I reluctantly agreed to your terms, but gave you notice immediately that I did not intend to continue as special prosecutor. So essentially, the way the president saw Mr. Amidu's work and the way Mr. Amidu saw his work, there was a point of departure. And the Japan deal being the classic example. Mr. Amidu thinks, I've done a report, I've shared it with the public, and I've given you a copy out of courtesy. You are saying I should not take any action, I should wait until I get some comments from the finance minister. That's not how I'm supposed to do my work. Therefore, I can't work for you on this point anymore. So this is where we are. The funny part of this is that he says he decided to resign November the 2nd, but waited till today to send his letter because he wanted to smoothly transition to his deputy. We can only wish her well. She's not been paid, and she's been now thrown this very difficult But some will call it a poison chalice. We can only pray for her.
Well, we have to end it here, but thank you very much, Bernard Avle. You can get a copy or the story on our website. It's on our website, citynewsroom.com. If you go on Radio Eyewitness News, the conversation is still continuing there. It will come back on TV at 8 o'clock on the City Newsroom. Are you having this discussion on Point of View?
Yes, we'll do a few minutes on it, on the Point of View.
And then at 9 o'clock, Bernard will also have it on the show. And then tomorrow morning on all our platforms, the conversation continues. So stick with us. We'll bring you all you need to know. Thank you.